having anyone tell me that C2E2 was so fun. Here I was the whole time, thinking that C2E2 was just the place where everybody cuts lines and sells acetate books. Little did I know that it might be the best con there is in the country. I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking to yourself, Swag, it is not the best con there is in the country. You have not been to Baltimore Comic-Con. You have not been to Heroes Con. Well, sir, you are right. I have not been to those Comic-Cons, so I can't stand on this. But as far as cons I have been to, C2E2 is one of the best ones that I've been to in a long time. So in this video, I want to kind of shoot from the hip a little bit, give my thoughts on C2E2, talk about some of the interesting things that came out of the con. This is one of those videos where I don't have too many, say, visuals to present you guys. I did shoot a little bit of footage, which I'll cut into the video when it's appropriate. But I really kind of want to just talk about some of my takeaways from the con experience overall. But of course, before I get into the video, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Helps support the channel doing those things. But let us get into this video here today. Now, this past weekend was C2E2 2024, and I actually was able to go out there and hop on a flight, go out to Chicago. I always forget how amazing of a city Chicago is. If Chicago had LA weather, I legit would consider living there. I would actually say that C2E2 feels like it is, as far as size-wise, it's like on the second tier, right? Where you have New York Comic-Con and San Diego, probably the 1A, 1B as far as the biggest Comic-Cons that are out there. And then you have that next tier of C2E2 and Emerald City, and I guess you would maybe say MegaCon and places like that. But this con was way better than those other ones I have gone to. Certainly WonderCon, certainly LA Comic-Con. Those cons are definitely not at the level of C2E2. And I have to say, as far as comic vendors are concerned, there were a good amount of vendors there, a lot of nice books on the wall, a lot of great shopping around the con. Unfortunately, I didn't buy anything while I was there. And a little bit of a caveat, I don't know, guys. This is something I feel like I need to admit to you guys or share with you guys. I'm having a hard time feeling like buying at Comic-Cons is worth it anymore. I mean, there's just so many places to get books, online now. And even though one of my LCSs is closing, I have a lot of other great LCSs that have been getting in collections and buying books from there and online sellers and Instagram claim sales. It's just so much easier. There's no hustle and bustle. There's no pressure. I don't have to ask the dealer to get the book off the wall only to find out that it was way higher priced than I wanted it to be because the price of the book was on the back of the thing and I didn't even know what the grade of it was. And I was looking for a VF copy, but really it was a VG, but it was so far away that I wasn't even to tell. So we spent all this time of you getting the book and showing it to me and me looking at it. And I was like, oh, well, this is not even what I even remotely want. So here you go. And we kind of waste a lot of time doing that. Whereas, with the online stuff, it's just so much easier to now look and just say like, okay, yeah, either this is a book that is within the type of books I'm looking for, or it's a book that is way lower grade or way higher grade or whatever the case is. So I'm just having a hard time making purchases at Comic-Cons. And that's just kind of my own personal experience. But that's not to say that I don't love going to Comic-Cons. Comic-Cons are great because you get to have so many interactions with people and you get to take a look at a lot of really, really great books that you may not see in person on a day-to-day experience, like one of the books that I was able to see, which of course we've talked about here on the channel. But that book, of course, was the giant size X-Men #1 in a CGC 9.9. I got to see the book firsthand at Vincent Zerzolo's booth, of course, Metropolis Comics or Comic Connect, the auction house that will be selling that book next month. And I got to say, when I saw it in person, I will say that the book presented nicer than the scans that we have analyzed. And one of the flaws that we had pointed out for that book was the white showing around the staple. When I did see it in person, at least under the C2E2 lighting conditions, the white didn't seem as bad, popping through that staple. It was there, but it wasn't as bad. That being said, though, if I'm being honest, I do have to say that it feels like the book has had a little bit of shifting in the case, meaning the pages and the book itself is now slightly misaligned. Now, that could be due to it having been in the case and being shaken around and people taking it off the shelf and looking at it, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe when the book was actually graded, it was absolutely perfect. but I do wonder if the shifting in the case is going to affect the perception of the value when it in fact does go to auction. All that being said, though, I still am of the camp that I think it's going to definitely be easily a $300,000 sale. I think it's maybe even more likely that it's going to be a $500,000 sale, and we'll have to see, what happens after that as far as if there's two crazy Storm Nightcrawler Colossus fans out there that are rich, that really, really want that book in their collection. Who knows what that book could actually go for. Sky could be the limit. Now, the other interesting experience I had at C2E2 was I actually, unironically, dropped off a book for Reholder at the CGC booth. I had an Avengers 4 that accidentally got cracked, that I'll probably put some pictures up and you guys can actually see. I figured I would just bring the book with me. That way I could save some money on shipping it to Florida. When I did actually submit for Reholder at CGC, this is something that I have not seen yet. Maybe you guys have had this experience if you've already done it, but the warning on the Reholder that you get prompted now at CGC is very explicit about them potentially lowering the grade of your comic book if they deem that it is in fact now lower or doesn't match the grade on the label. And this is something that was not the case, at least in my last time reholdering a book, which, it's been a little bit of a time since I've actually reholdered a book, but I actually have done it. I think it was 2022 San Diego Comic-Con. I reholdered an Avengers 1, and I definitely did not get prompted with this sort of information. So I do think that that's very interesting. Obviously, in the wake of all of the stuff going on with Reholdergate and the CGC scandals and lawsuits, it feels like they had to definitely button themselves up pretty heavily in the Reholder program. It'll be interesting when I get the book back. I'm sure I'll do a video about it. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what's going on with the Reholder program. And I hope that I don't get my grade lowered. I actually had a CGC 4.0 on it, and we'll have to see. What if it comes back a 3.5? I would be actually pretty sad about that. Another interesting thing that happened at C2E2 that I wanted to talk about, and maybe I can do a video like this on the channel in the future, the idea of Repacks, and specifically a company called Hit Parade that is now doing mystery boxes basically on steroids. Now, if you guys don't know, Repacks in the sports card world have been absolutely blowing up. This is something that Neo has talked about a lot on his channel, and he's made a point that now Repacks are selling for more than that of actual unsealed or sealed boxes themselves. Essentially, if you guys, to give you the quick TLDR, Repacks are people buying up key sports cards and then putting them in resealed boxes and then selling them on their Whatnot accounts, or doing unboxings on Whatnot. And essentially, it's a mystery box that has certain grand prizes in it, or chase cards or whatever. So it's not too dissimilar from things that already sort of exist or have sort of existed in, say, the sports card world, or mystery boxes in the comic space. But it's been a little while since people have done these like really massive grand prize comic books, or these really massive grand prize sports cards. And right now, based on what is happening in the sports card world and the success of all these repacks, effectively, people are going to shows and buying up, massive Grail cards at basically 90% of fair market value, and just swooping them all up just so they can start to put them into these repacks that, all the kind of degen sports card collectors are absolutely eating this stuff up and loving it. Now, Rob has always said that, hey, it's only a matter of time before this goes over to comic books. And I'm sort of the opinion that, yeah, maybe we might see it in comic books, but I'm really not so sure. I mean, sports card people are a little more conditioned to, the box break type of stuff, like they're kind of into, sort of the surprise thing. I'm not sure if comic collectors have that same sort of degen behavior, but there are a lot of people that like to do the grab bags, that like to do the mystery boxes, and those have been fairly successful. Anyways, I say all that to say this. When I was actually with Comic Tom when this happened, they invited us over to check out their booth and actually open up a couple of these sort of mystery box, repack sort of comic book slab boxes. And we actually did it. And Tom, funny enough, pulled a Silver Surfer 4 from 1969, the John Buscema cover with Thor and Silver Surfer on it, in a CGC 4.5, which was pretty interesting because, the box itself is being sold at $150. Off the top of my head, I would guess that book is probably, a $500 fair market value type of thing. Now, maybe they rigged it because they wanted Comic Tom to open up a box like coincidentally. Oh, it's going to be one of the grand prizes. I don't know. They just seemingly pulled a random box and gave it to him, and he just sort of hit big. But I want to throw that out to you guys as far as something for us to keep our eyes on. Like, will these repack situations become bigger in the future? Obviously, we have mystery boxes, and that's already a thing in comic books. But I think that like the repack element and the chase sort of incentive grail that is getting put into these things is sort of a new kind of concept. Now, Bryce Comics did a little bit of a thing with this, with his mystery boxes, but this feels a little bit different if it's, mostly focused on vintage comic books that have keys in it. That could be something that has big implications on the secondary market, and we'll have to, do more content about it and keep our eye on it in the future. But Hit Parade was something interesting that I noticed at C2E2. Now, one other little interesting thing I noticed at the con, which is something that I've not seen this at any other con, and I don't know how C2E2 gets away with it. Frankly, I'm glad they get away with it. I think it's awesome, but this is the first and only con, at least at this scale, that actually has a beer gardens on, the floor. I couldn't believe it, that there was a beer gardens there, and that was a cool thing to see. That was actually, made the experience a lot more fun. Like, you would just see, the vendors, everybody is, having a good time, putting a cold one back. And frankly, I think that actually loosened people up. I think there were more smiles, more people talking, more people having a good time. I didn't even mention yet how busy the con was. I thought the attendance was really, really good. Considering, some of the attendance that I've seen at WonderCon and LA Comic Con, which was really, really bad, especially in comparison. This attendance almost felt like near that San Diego Comic-Con level, where when you're walking on the floor, it is a little more shoulder to shoulder, and it is a little more sardines in there. But I would say with the experience of the beer gardens, I think that adds an element to the Comic-Con that I wasn't used to. So that was really actually fun and cool to see. Now, as far as what was hot and what was actually trending, I wasn't able to do my typical, talk to dealers, do interviews, sort of content, sort of video. I will be doing one of those at San Diego Comic-Con when we get to that later on in July. Obviously, I just did my one at WonderCon where I talked to the dealers, and I felt like, let me give it a little more time before I do another one. That way we might have more interesting things to discuss and talk to. But that being said, I did speak to a lot of the dealers and just sort of got their thoughts and opinions on how things were going with, sales, with the market, what's kind of moving, what's new, what's interesting. And here are some of the things that they shared with me if you guys are interested to hear about them. The first thing they talked about was that X-Men books are just going bananas. It's all X-Men. I mean, this is stuff that we could have known to be true. I mean, we've done content here on the channel already talking about X-Men 97 and the impact that a lot of those X-Men books have had as a result of the show. We're, just a stone's throw away from Deadpool and Wolverine. It feels like X-Men fever is at an all-time high. Even the Giant Size X-Men #1 is a book that I've noticed outside of the 9/9 has been in very, very high demand. A lot of people asking about Giant Size X-Men #1. That could, again, have to do with the show. But X-Men books are really in demand right now, even more so than that of ASM, Spider-Man keys, which is not typically the case. Also, a lot of Golden Age. A lot of people still looking at the Golden Age comic books. Of course, all the timely stuff, the pre-code horror stuff, that's always going to have a market, that's always going to be in demand. But there are also some other, interesting Golden Age stuff, like some of the funny books, the Dell stuff, the Looney Tunes comics, that now people are starting to ask a little bit about. Raw books, I think, continues to still be the thing that most collectors want to buy. Not a lot of graded books moving out there in the market, or at the Comic-Con, certainly not a lot of the graded books that are on the wall. Probably still not too many wall books overall moving, although if there are raw wall books, I think people are starting to make purchases on that. So I think a lot of people are, looking for raw books for one of two reasons. Either one, they just would rather collect them that way. Maybe there's somebody who actually wants to flip through the book and enjoy it, read it, do the whole thing. Or two, people are looking for that equity. They want to buy a raw book because, presumably they can find one that is being sold at a price at discount compared to its graded comic book counterpart. So they would rather do that and actually have a little bit of margin if they decide to resell it, or if they decide to just keep it. They know that they're going to be getting a good deal on it if they buy raw versus graded. And then the last little thing that dealers were talking to me about was how much books that had artists at the show always move. Now, this is something that may be obvious, but people love signed books, guys. People love to have their raw comics get signed by their favorite artist, or they like the experience of having the comic and then walking it over to Artist Alley, going up to, one of their favorite writers or their favorite creators and saying that they love their work. Can you sign my book? If you're somebody out there who, is ever a dealer at a show, or you're somebody out there that, knows that you want to get books signed, this could be interesting information to you, is that, dealers might actually mark up some of those books that they know the artist is going to be at the show for. So you may want to make sure that you're bringing your own books so you don't have to overpay if you actually want to get, someone to sign it at the show. Or conversely, again, if you're a dealer, always make sure that you're looking at that list, like who's going to be showing up in attendance, because you're going to get a lot of people asking about, hey, do you have such and such person's book, Chris Claremont's book? Hey, do you have an Art Adams book? Hey, do you have, a David Finch book? You're going to want to know those artists that are at the show, and you're going to want to have those books available to people to buy so they can have that experience with their favorite artists. Anyways, that was my insight and recap of C2E2. I had a great time at the show. I was a little disappointed that I was not able to find the Ultimate Fallout 4 Acetate book. I really, really, really wanted to buy it at that show, just so that in this video, I can make a joke about me having it. But I didn't see them there. There was none. I actually asked a few people if they happened to have it, and nobody did. And actually, I do want to finish out the video by just checking in on the C2E2 book. Where is this book at right now? What has this thing sold for recently? And I think it's so funny how the prices are still, not nothing, but obviously a lot lower than what they once were. Now you're mostly seeing a lot of the books that have the green label or the gold label with the green on it. Here's a 10.0 that went for $200. Here's a 9.8 that went for $172. Here's a raw copy that went for $68. What did it sell for back in the day? I think it was hitting, the $150 mark, something like that. You go over to GPA analysis. Someone actually did buy the 10.0 copy that was still in the blue label. If you guys remember, there was one 10.0 copy that got the blue label treatment before CGC switched it over to automatically giving green labels. So I think this is one that's kind of infamous, but someone actually did buy it in March of 2023 for $4,800. Can you believe that? That is amazing to me. If you go over to CGC census thing, you can no longer look up this book because they actually removed it. This feature is currently unavailable. Please try again. They actually removed it from their census because, they wanted to get rid of all the blue label ones and then turn them over to the green labels right here. But, pretty crazy that someone was willing to spend $4,000 on that book a year ago. I wonder what it would sell for today if it showed up on eBay. Anyways, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Have you been to C2E2 before? Did you go to C2E2? How was your experience? Have you been going to shows? How is your feeling with shows so far? I think that Comic Cons are going to be a good time this summer. I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm. I think that attendance was really good. And I think that this could be a overall really good positive summer for comic book fans, collectors, buyers, and sellers, all alike. Anyways, that's all right for this one. Like, comment, subscribe. See you on the next one.